All right, welcome back. Let's start again. So I would like to say now a few words about the scope of the lecture and what we are about to do. If you look at the stack, there's databases, but then there's machine learning, there's artificial intelligence, and so on. This is not what we are going to do in this lecture. We are not going to touch machine learning or artificial intelligence. However, as I said, this belongs together. If you use machine learning, actually one way, at least the classical machine learning, so the prediction, linear regression, and so on, so I'm not talking deep learning, this is tabular data, right? You just have a column of, who knows a bit machine learning? Some of you. So you have the column of some columns of features, some column of labels, and so on. So it's all relational data. But a really challenging part when you do machine learning is to prepare your data sets. And in fact, how do you prepare data sets? Well, with database query languages. This is how you prepare data sets. So if you are able to reach a level of mastery of data manipulation, that somebody gives you a not clean data set that's very messy, we'll learn in this lecture how we can actually clean it up efficiently using a language that is appropriate for that, so that at the end, you have a clean table or a clean collection of trees that you can input into your machine learning system. So this is really orthogonal and complementary. So the saying goes like garbage in, garbage out, right? So if you want high quality learning, you need high quality data in the input. There are people who perceive, at least when it goes into deep learning, that you can just feed the data just as it is into the system, it will just work. But I think that in the recent years, there's been a bit of a reality check on this, that this is not how it works. And you actually need to clean the data and prepare the data before you feed it in the system. It's just as important as getting the machine learning in place. So I hope that you see that even though we are not covering machine learning and AI, it belongs together. It's part of the same technology stack. And I want to bring you this level of mastery that you can manipulate data just like you would manipulate molecules in chemistry. All right. So this is the team. I didn't manage to get all of the pictures. I'll still add them later if the TAs send them to me. But this is who is going to be teaching big data for engineers this semester, and we have TAs right here in the room, plenty of them. So we have Wenxi right here, who is going to moderate the lecture. So Wenxi is making sure that when you raise your hands, have this little cube microphone here that we can throw, you can ask questions live, and people on Zoom will hear you. If you are on Zoom, you can paste your questions in the Zoom chat, and also Wenxi will interrupt me so that I answer. So you can participate in the lecture hall or on Zoom in the same way. Then we have, okay, where do I start? We have Dhruv over there, Gregory, Samyak, Jashi, and Jingi, yes. And missing, so who don't we not have? So Melisande, John Hao, and David are also in the team, and some of you will see them in the exercise sessions, right? Oh, so that I don't forget, there is no exercise session this week. It's only going to be next week. However, this week there will be a support session. So when she has already prepared in the Moodle a Docker environment that you can try out. If you have a problem, then you can come on Friday to the support session and ask for help. If you don't have a problem, then you don't need to come, right? So what will we cover in this course? Well, this is kind of the menu now. We are going to look into all the ways to store data. So you see all these technologies here, so tables and trees. This is a distributed file system on a cluster for petabytes of data, JSON, XML, YAML, these are trees. Parquet, Avro, these are more efficient formats, especially for machine learning. You want to be efficient. We are going to look at, who heard about data frames? Pandas, maybe? Oh, you heard about pandas. Okay, well, I'll show you better things than pandas. Now, something that scales even more than that. But it's the same idea, right? The data frames, we'll see them again, and we'll actually see that data frames is actually valid JSON in some way. So we'll study that. Then we'll look at MapReduce, at Yarn vaguely. I'm barely just going to say a few words about that because it's just about the resource management. Apache Spark, who heard about Apache Spark? A lot of you? Some of you? Okay, so this is lower level data processing. Then we look into a document store. MongoDB is the most popular one, but there's others. So these are just relational databases, but instead of tables, it's trees. It's that simple. And then we look at JSONic, which is like SQL, but again, SQL is for tables, JSONic is for trees, and Spark SQL. So we'll see SQL again in the context of querying data frames processed with Spark, right? So you see all of that belongs together, and it will all add up like the pieces of a gigantic puzzle throughout the semester. In order to get the 6 credit points, you should attend the weekly lecture, like Tuesdays from 8 to 10. There's an exercise session, also 2 hours. We have some slots on Wednesdays, 2 to 4 and 4 to 6, and on Friday, 4 to 6, I think on Friday. We have 7 groups. Please register yourself to a group. There is one overfilled group where we just made a mistake with the capacity. So just make sure that you deregister and spread across all of the groups. If we see that there is demand for more exercise sessions on Wednesdays compared to Friday, because that's how it looks like at the moment, we'll see if we can arrange, to move one of the exercise sessions to Wednesdays. Please tell us if you don't manage to register and you'd like to attend an exercise session, and we'll try to find a solution, right? Okay, but again, the exercise sessions, they officially start next week, next Wednesday. There is self-study because that actually adds more credits to the course. Otherwise, it would be less credits. So read the readings. So I said the books, but now it's basically there's a notebook, there's a textbook. It was by popular demand in the big data and big data for engineers classes. Now every week we're going to read a new chapter of the big data textbook, right? Which basically is a script of what I'm telling you in the lecture, but I'll still give you some optional readings and sometimes some scientific papers as mandatory readings when I think that that actually makes sense, right? So please look at the Moodle every week. There will be readings, mandatory and optional readings. We used to do mandatory, recommended, and optional, but I have the feeling that the difference between mandatory and recommended was causing a bit of confusion. So I'll see if we can downscale that to just 2 categories, like either it's mandatory or it's optional. Okay, so please do it. Please make sure to self-study, use the technologies. There will be practical assignments, so you actually will really work with the technologies. And then, of course, there will be the written exam in the summer session, 3 hours, 60 questions at most, and that's going to be a computer exam, but I will tell you more later. I have to say also, so that if you're an exchange student, there is no possibility of a remote exam or oral exam. So you really need to make sure that you attend the exam in presence at ETH in August. Okay. Now I have good news for you. Because there's bonus points in this lecture, you can get an extra quarter point at the exam. And in order to get up to this extra quarter points, you'll have quizzes during the semester. Every week, there will be 2 quizzes, maybe one in one of the weeks. If you pass the quiz, you get 0.01. And if you pass all 25, 25, that brings you to 0.25. So the way it works is that these extra points get added to the raw grade before the rounding. We have the marks in the Moodle, we convert them to ETH scale, but at that point, it's rounded to the next % of grade, right? Then we add the bonus points, and then we round to the quarter points, to the nearest quarter points, as is ETH practice, right? So of course, if you already have 6, that will still be a 6. You're not going to get 625, but this is the idea, right? So I encourage you to do to solve the quizzes and do the exercises. It's also a way to get feedback during the semester. If you have a disagreement with a quiz, or you think you should pass because one of the answers, you believe your answer should be counted as correct and so on, don't hesitate. Send an email to the TA team. Try to argue. It's part of the learning, right? You're in a university, so if you are able to argue and advocate for your solution and prove to us that your solution is correct, then we can have this discussion and count it as correct. But of course, if we do it for everybody, right? We don't do it on an individual basis because we apply the same grading scheme to everybody. But don't hesitate to tell us if you have any concerns about passing or not passing a quiz. All right. Now, almost every week, we're going to use Docker, which is a standardized way of installing stuff on your computer without having to support every single computer. It's basically, it's called the Dockerized environment. It means that you all run the exact same code on your machine, kind of embedded as a mini Linux on your machine. But the good news is that it's super easy because all you need to do is download the files from the repository, and then you type the command docker compose up, and that's it. And then you open Jupyter Notebook in your browser and it should just work. If you have an Apple M1 or M2, sometimes there are issues, let us know. Normally we have a few workarounds. In the worst case, I think the TA team has a workaround with GitHub code spaces, I think. So we'll find a way, right? But normally for most of you, Docker should be super easy to use. If you have a problem with the Docker environment, it's like the IT crowd, right? Have you tried to switch it off and on again? You should delete all the Docker images, the Docker volumes, and the Docker containers. Just delete everything and try again. Very often that actually solves the problem, right? So, but this week you're going to have not a fake Docker, it's still a Docker, but the only purpose of what we give you this week is to check that it works. So do it, download it, check that it works. If it works, that's fine. If it doesn't work, come on Friday to the support session and the TAs will help you. All right. Now, Azure, that's a grant that we have by Microsoft. So we'll probably do it in May. It will be an opportunity for you to actually click a few buttons to trigger plenty of machines in the cloud. And to use is going to be pretty much everything at the same time, the storage layer, the cloud storage, Apache Spark, RumbleDB, and so on, but in the cloud. So it's a good experience. We used before to use Azure every week, but now we use Docker because it's much more manageable, and I think you learn just as much. Do we have a question on Zoom? There's no question? I thought there was, okay. Okay. Now, this is the URL of the textbook. It's publicly available. It's almost done. I think it's 90% done now. So you can really, every week, I'll give you the chapters to read. I'm not quite done yet with the last chapter on querying messy data, but this is ongoing, right? So it's all available here on this address. It's open. You can even share it with anybody in the world. That's the whole point of putting it out there so people can use it. Some people use it at other universities if they want to. It's basically free. All right, so you can get it there. I might do a few updates, you know, every couple of weeks. So check back on the page if there's been updates. But the most updates I expect are really in the last chapter about querying messy data. All right. Something that would be great if you could do it now, if you haven't already, if you could go to element.int.ethg.ch and log in with your ETH login and password just to trigger the account creation. It's not a new password, it's just your ETH password. But once you have done that, I'll be able to add you to the chat room of the course. So you can use the chat room to discuss with the team. There is also a Moodle forum. I think it's, how is it called? Moodle Overflow. It's like a Stack Overflow within Moodle or something. You can ask questions and the TA team will answer. I think the TA team decided to use Moodle as the guaranteed answer location. So if you want an answer, you should ask it on Moodle, but the Element chat is also quite useful to ask more smaller or easier questions. All right. So we'll invite you over to the chat as soon as you have registered there. You don't need to be in the computer science department, just to make it clear. That works for the whole of ETH, this website. Okay, and also to be clear, this is all hosted at ETH. This is not in the cloud somewhere. This is here in Switzerland on ETH computers. This is also for data protection reasons, so you don't have to worry about that. And speaking about data protection, you also, when you use Azure, you do not have, I mean, you can use by default your ETH email address. If anybody has a concern about data protection and you don't want Azure to know who you are, then it should be possible to use an anonymous email address to register with Azure, but we need to know. So the TA team needs to know who you are, but to Azure, you will be anonymous, right? So if any of you has concern, please talk to us and we'll just make you anonymous. Okay. Moodle is where the course material will be, the slides, the recordings, the exercises, everything will be in there. And you're automatically in there if you're registered in My Studies. If you're not registered in My Studies yet, please do it now, and then you'll get access to the Moodle. Right? I think that's the last slide of the first series of slides. Any
There's a
questions
question
so
on the
yes?
chat. Is it possible to do the exam in the fall semester?
No, it's every year. So if you cannot attend the exam or do not pass the exam, then it's 1 year later, right? In summer 2024. But again, I'm saying that without guarantee because, as you know, the course catalog at ETH is decided every 6 months, right? So the only sure thing is this semester, and then every semester there's a new course catalog. But normally there will not be any exam in the winter session, if that's the question, right? Okay. Any other questions? Then I'll switch over to the SQL brush up.